From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Carla Gonzalez. We begin in Colombia, where right-wing parties have taken the lead in Sunday's legislative elections, marked by a series of irregularities. With almost 99% of the vote counted, the Democratic Center Party, led by former President Álvaro Uribe, came first in the Senate with 19 out of 102 seats. It also came second in the lower house with 32 out of the 166 representatives. But along with two other parties of the right, it failed to win the clear majority it was hoping for. This was the first time the FARC, previously known as the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia and now known as Revolutionary Alternative Force of the Commons, appeared on a ballot. The peace deal signed in 2016 guarantees the party 5 seats in the Senate and 5 seats in the lower house until 2026, regardless of the numbers of votes it received in the elections.
I did not think this would happen so soon, but we must recognize one thing, that this is thanks to the peace agreement signed in Havana, a momentous event for which all of us Colombians hoped. We're all aware of its significance. With it, we are able to stop 50 years of armed conflict. It is very important that this atmosphere of reconciliation and peace embraces all Colombia, all Colombians. We must do everything possible so that the war does not return to Colombia.
These elections are very special. It's the first time in more than half a century that the FARC, rather than sabotaging the election, is participating in them. That's something historic and very important for our democracy.
And voters expressed their hopes for an end to corruption among politicians, but they were also frustrated at irregularities in the process, including problems with the electoral register.
There's too much corruption. What I expect from this new Congress is that corruption comes to an end. I expect decency from them and new projects for Colombia, projects to help everyone, young and old, rich and poor, equal rights for everyone, and no more corruption. When you educate yourself, you realize that Colombia's history is very sad.
I hope that there will be equality, social justice, and opportunities for everyone. I expect legislators to honor their promises and that they help Colombia, not just themselves.
Today, I came to vote like 8 years ago, but when I arrived, they told me that I couldn't vote. Just like last time. There is a problem in the National Civil Registry, which I tried to solve back then. I took the papers and spent money on them. Supposedly, the situation was fixed. But now, 8 years later, I found out that it's not. The problem is with the date of issue on my ID. I still have my ID with errors because it was easier to keep it like that, because the registry couldn't fix the problem.
And alongside the parliamentary elections, Colombians also voted in primaries to choose some of the candidates who will stand in May's presidential poll. The former mayor of Bogotá, Gustavo Petro, won a clear victory in the center-left primary, while Iván Duque, a protege of Álvaro Uribe, won the nomination for a number of right-wing parties. The primary votes saw the most serious irregularities, with the head of the Civil National Registry, Juan Carlos Galindo, announcing that there were not enough ballots that were printed and that photocopies were being used instead.
There have been problems with the ballots. They ran out in some places, even though we printed 30 million ballots at some polling stations, especially in Medellín, Montería, Cúcuta, and Manizales. We had problems with that. However, we agree with the political parties, and due to budget restrictions, they have authorized to proceed with photocopies. Right now, at those polling stations, people are casting their votes on photocopies authorized with the signature of the members of the station.
People outraged at the photocopy situation posted videos on social media, and at one polling station, the voters chanted, "There is no democracy." Presidential candidate Gustavo Petro was active on Twitter throughout the day and, along with a number of independent media outlets, retweeted a video of jurors in Medellin hiding orange ballots. He wrote, quote, "In many voting centers, officers are hiding orange cards under their legs. This is a film crime." In another tweet, he said that Colombia was in fraud mode. Our correspondent Lorena Hoyos tells us more from Bogotá.
The legislative election that took place this Sunday in Colombia has been described as historic, as it was the first one to happen after the peace agreement that was signed between the government and the FARC. The former armed group FARC also participated, a concrete action towards respecting the peace agreement that detailed the FARC should have political participation. Despite this, the political reform agreement wasn't completely fulfilled because Congress didn't approve all the reforms ahead of the election. This is seen as further evidence the electoral system in the country is not supported by any guarantees, especially for the alternative parties. Many denounced irregularities during the electoral process, especially during the primaries. Several sectors denounced the fact there weren't enough ballot sheets printed. Authorities responded saying voters could photocopy the ballot sheets and bring it to the polling stations. Many couldn't cast their vote or had to wait 2 hours to do so. Presidential candidate Gustavo Petro said the government was not giving any guarantee or ensuring transparency in the process. Voters are asking themselves now what will happen during the presidential election of May 27th and are asking the government for guarantees to have a fair presidential election that is not dominated by the political elite that have opposed the participation of alternative parties in this process.
That was Lorena Hoyos from Bogotá. Rodrigo Londoño, the former presidential candidate for the FARC, has been discharged from the hospital. Londoño underwent 2 open-heart surgeries in a week, following a cardiac arrest that forced him to abandon the Colombian presidential race. And Cubans turned out en masse to vote in legislative elections on Sunday, a key step in a process leading to the election of a new president. Almost 80% of the 8 million eligible voters showed up to vote. The polls closed at 6 p.m. local time. The National Electoral Commission is expected to issue a final report later on Monday. Miguel Díaz-Canel is largely expected to become the next president of Cuba, taking over from Raúl Castro. Castro said he will step down in April, but will continue as a National Assembly deputy. Díaz-Canel will be the first head of state in nearly 60 years from outside the Castro family and with no military history.
I am sure that sooner or later we will also defeat the imperialist design, and we will also bring down the blockade with international support, with recognition of the resistance, of the heroism of our people and dignity. And today here we are also showing dignity.
And Cubans seem ready to embrace the change in leadership.
Anyone who leads the country well, that's what's important. The main thing, that they lead well, that they look out for the good of Cuba.
For more on this election, our correspondent in Havana, Laura Prada, reports.
Elections of continuity and renovation characterized this day by organization and tranquility. Cuba's Chancellor Bruno Rodriguez was one of the authorities to vote this Sunday.
The National Assembly will choose the candidates for State Council. I have seen incongruencies in the way how the President and the State Council is elected through direct and secret vote on ballots by the same National Assembly. Of course, there will be a sense of renewal and continuity.
The youth is one of the most representative sector of the Cuban society. More than 38,000 are voting for the first time in their lives, and 17,000 are collaborators who watch for the legality of the process.
The youth are also taken into account in the parliament, a place where laws are crafted to develop different economic and social policies.
These are the first general elections without the physical presence of Fidel, but his legacy is more alive than ever.
It is a voluntary decision of each of us, and that is why we come here today, to follow the ideals that were born 150 years ago, with the first call for Cuba's freedom.
The Cuban general elections will continue until the 23rd of March, when provincial assemblies settle, and the 19th of April, when the National Assembly begins. Laura Prada, teleSUR La Habana.
Conservative billionaire Sebastián Piñera was sworn in to his second term as president of Chile, replacing socialist Michelle Bachelet. The conservative politician and businessman was sworn in on Sunday after promising to revive the economy. Piñera's first term from 2010 to 2014 was marked by pro-business policies that led to strong economic growth. His efforts were also helped by rising prices for Chile's biggest export, copper. And Bachelet was cheered by supporters as she capped a second term in office. During her tenure, she spearheaded an ambitious package of reforms aimed at eliminating the institutional legacy of the dictatorship of Augusto Pinochet. In a Facebook message, she said she was, quote, profoundly proud of the transformation that we pushed these years. And she said that she was convinced Chile today is more just, equitable, and free.
I came here to thank Michelle Bachelet for her work that will live on for posterity. History will always thank this great woman.
I want to thank our president for showing that women's leadership is possible. She demonstrated that women want and can do things.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
I just got detained by ICE. Trying to really separate me and tear our movement apart, tear our community apart, and I'm not letting that happen, and I need you to stand up for me. I need you to fight for me. As I'm fighting inside, you please fight outside. Call ICE, write letters of support, do whatever we can so we can win and we can get them. And they're retaliating against all activists, all organized people who have advocacy and who are out there fighting. And it's my turn to ask for you guys' help, so please help.
Welcome back. Ecuador's assembly has voted to dismiss its president, José Serrano. It has also initiated a political impeachment trial against the district attorney, Carlos Vaca Mancheno. In a fiery session late Friday, both men were allowed to present the defense.
The first to appear in the assembly was the district attorney Vaca Mancheno, who talked about events that occurred since he took office and accused the president of the assembly, José Serrano, of conspiring against him.
Prosecutors are not to comply or to make agreements, especially with fugitives from justice. Prosecutors are to investigate and to accuse or file, but not to agree anything, and I have not agreed anything.
The president of the assembly, José Serrano, on the other hand, affirmed that the prosecutor didn't receive the recording audio from a police report.
Dear fellow citizens, this is what they are doing with the president of the assembly. I have to say that the district attorney of the nation is a dangerous person for the country.
The National Assembly approved The motion made by Henry Cucalong, member of the Social Christian Party, with 103 votes in favor to dismiss the president of the Assembly, José Serrano, and also to impeach the district attorney, Carlos Vaca Mancheno. During the session, the secretary of the Assembly left the room.
I have to say to the country that after listening to the hearings, we don't believe anything.
With surprise, I had to hear that the Secretary of the Assembly resigned because she says she would not be authorized to sign the act, which dismisses the President of the Assembly.
The situation became tense in Ecuador, and at the next Assembly gathering, the members are expected to choose a new president for Ecuador's Assembly. Denise Herrera, teleSUR, Quito, Ecuador.
In Honduras, former President Manuel Zelaya has called on for an urgent meeting with the United Nations. Zelaya wants to secure a dialogue between the government and the opposition. Zelaya complained that during the previous two meetings, the UN mediators ignored what he calls the electoral coup on November 26. The opposition alliance is urging the UN to first address irregularities during the last Honduran elections. 35 people have been killed during demonstrations since then. And thousands of people joined the Bolivian Navy to display a 200-kilometer-long flag along a highway in the Andes that connects the cities of La Paz and Oruro. They want to support Bolivia's attempt to reclaim sea access for the country.
Starting very early in the morning, people began arriving to the La Paz-Oruro highway with their contributions to the largest flag in the world.
Pedimos más para Bolivia y estaremos las mujeres firmes para
women are here to fight for it, to fight for our maritime claim.
We are stuck without sea. We don't have any sea at all. Chile took it from us a long time ago. They took away our access to the ocean.
The enormous flag for the maritime claim supports a legal team that will begin their case on March 19th, when they will argue in a trial against Chile to try to reach a solution to Bolivian maritime problem.
This has to happen for our children. We are not going to see it, but our children must have a way out to the sea.
We are suffering because of this usurpation that happened more than 130 years ago.
The government initiated the idea of making the biggest flag in the world, originally planning to create one 70-kilometer long, but the expectation was surpassed, and according to official reports, the flag reached 196.5 kilometers. This is a clear show of support from the Bolivian people to the calling of President Evo Morales.
We'll show the International Court of Justice and everyone around the world that our cause is just, reasonable, and trustworthy.
President Evo Morales said once again that he is convinced that when the trial goes to the International Court of Justice in The Hague, the outcome will be positive.
For over a century, Chile has recognized the need to find a solution to Bolivia's confinement situation, and the restart of negotiations is a high priority for us.
139 years ago, Chile seized 120,000 kilometers of territory that connected Bolivia to the Pacific Ocean. Since then, Bolivia has been pushing for a negotiated solution. The case will end on March 28th, and the outcome is expected in the last quarter of this year.
The summit of the International Solar Alliance, ISA, has come to a close in the Indian capital, New Delhi, where Venezuela's Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza highlighted the importance of solar power and other sources of renewable energy.
President Nicolás Maduro said that Venezuela has a great responsibility to develop solar energy. Even though Venezuela is by nature an oil producer, socialist ethics say that we should develop other types of energy resources. The future of the world depends on it. We can't be dependent on fossil fuels. In his speech in New Delhi, President Maduro announced a Petrocaribe financing project to support solar energy. The project will be financed with the petro, the Venezuelan cryptocurrency. This will benefit the Petrocaribe countries. So it's not only for Latin America, for Venezuela, but also for the Caribbean. That's fundamental for us. We are very happy that Venezuela is a founding country of the Solar Alliance.
In Mexico, the Cultural Brigade is making efforts to promote reading among Mexicans, and their efforts are gaining traction.
One of the main tasks of the Cultural Brigade is to introduce and promote reading in children. They make sure that in every book fair there is a space dedicated to kids.
Kids are forced to read when they start their early education, which can sometimes generate a phobia. However, fairy tales are a great opportunity to make reading fun, helping kids with their emotional intelligence and providing knowledge.
Storytellers have the task of transmitting the most amazing stories, but they also awaken interest in children through games and dynamics.
Currently, with so much technology and with so many changes, kids are no longer interested in reading. They are more interested in being in front of a tablet, where they can play interactive games, but there is nothing like a book.
The 9th International Book Fair is taking place in Azcapotzalco. Here, the visitors can find different books with lower prices compared to the bookstores.
I always say I'm only going to look, but then a book catches my eye and I ended up buying a lot of books. It's inevitable.
Independent writers are thankful for these kinds of spaces because they can offer their books without any middlemen.
Art is not a privilege, art is a right, and we all have the right to sing, dance, draw, and the right to read and write is an essential human right.
There are new books and also used ones in good condition. The initiative is promoted by the authorities and by writer Paco Ignacio Taibo. The initiative is much needed in Mexico, where people on average read less than 4 books a year.
We'll take one last short break. Join us after a look at what our multimedia team is reporting. Welcome back. China has abolished limits on presidential terms, paving the way for President Xi Jinping to rule indefinitely. With the exception of 5 delegates, almost 3,000 members of the National People's Congress voted in favor of changing the constitution. The result was widely expected, given Xi's growing influence within the Communist Party. A majority of Chinese people believe Xi has improved their living standards. And here's a look at other stories around the world.
A passenger plane has crashed at Kathmandu airport in Nepal. The plane, operated by US Bangla, a Bangladeshi airline, veered off runway while landing and caught fire. It was carrying 67 passengers and 4 crew members. So far, 17 people are reported to have been rescued. Fears over casualties are mounting, but the number has yet not been confirmed. In another aircraft crash, a helicopter in New York crashed, killing all 5 passengers on board, while the pilot managed to escape safely. The Eurocopter AS-350 helicopter crashed into New York's East River near Roosevelt Island and quickly submerged in water. The helicopter was hired by the passenger for a photo shoot.
The pilot freed himself. The other 5 did not. So police and fire divers entered the water and removed the other 5. 3 of them were removed in critical condition. They have been removed to the hospital. 2 of them were pronounced dead at the scene.
France's far-right leader Marine Le Pen has proposed to change the name of her party from National Front to National Rally. The populist leader proposed the new name after she was re-elected as the leader of the party for a 3rd time. This latest move by Le Pen is being seen as an attempt to revamp her image in a bid to break with the racist, anti-Semitic legacy of her party's founder and her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen.
This name must not just be a project. It must be a rallying cry, a call to join us, launched to those who, like us, have France in their hearts. A call to all the French people, all those who come, those who are going to write a page of our country's history along with us.
Tens of thousands of Catalan separatists have protested in Barcelona on Sunday, demanding the release of political prisoners. They also called to elect a new leader and to continue efforts towards the formation of a Catalan republic. Spain's Supreme Court has ruled out the release of Catalonian leader nominee Jordi Sánchez from jail to attend a parliamentary session planned for Monday.
And we've come to the end of this morning news brief, but you can find more stories on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla González. Thank you for watching.
Infested by inequalities, abuse of